Hello everyone and welcome to my channel Y&R Trends. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. The Newman Ranch had been seething with tension for days, but nobody could have foretold the impending eruption. It started with a rumor that Victoria had discovered a set of DNA results connected to Noah's enigmatic relationship with Mitch Bacall, the man who had just appeared in Genoa City, and claimed he wasn't Matt Clark. But underlying Mitch's calm facade was the same cunning energy, the tone, the smile, the arrogant confidence that plagued Nick Newman's early years. It was as if a ghost had returned from the grave when Nick walked into the room and met Mitch's gaze. And Nick will never forget the visage of that ghost. As soon as Mitch spoke, Nick's blood began to boil. "You're making a mistake, Nick," Mitch remarked calmly, displaying the same smile that used to belong to Matt Clark, his former adversary. Nick disagreed, saying, "You're seeing what you want to see." Anger that had been suppressed for years surfaced. Nick snarled, his fists squeezed so tightly that his knuckles turned white. "Don't you dare talk to me like I don't know who you are." Noah, Sharon, and Victoria stood motionless as the room went silent. With a secret she had kept for too long, Sharon's heart was racing as her gaze flitted between the two guys. She was aware that everything would fall apart tonight in one way or another. Nick lost it as Mitch, who was still certain about his new persona, moved closer to Noah. "Avoid my son at all costs," he bellowed. Mitch chuckled. "Your son? That's wealthy," he remarked, grinning darkly. "Are you certain you're not referring to my son?" The tenuous control Nick had left was destroyed by that one sentence. Nick moved forward and struck Mitch squarely in the jaw before anyone could stop him. Like a thunderclap, the sound reverberated throughout the home. Mitch staggered backward, slamming into a shattered glass table. He grinned once more, almost with pride, and blood trickled from the corner of his mouth. "Did I not strike a nerve?" he whispered. Sharon raced to Nick's side, her voice shaking, as Victoria gasped and covered her mouth in disbelief. "Stop, Nick. This isn't the way, please." But Mitch's lies weren't the only thing that infuriated Nick. Everything that man stood for terrible. All of his prior traumas, betrayals, and scars had suddenly come to life in front of him. Nick spat. "You once attempted to ruin my family." But Sharon's voice broke through the confusion like lightning, saying, "You won't do it again. Listen to me, Nick." The room froze once more. "He's not lying about everything." Noah, who had been mute up until this point, turned to face his mother with fear and bewilderment in his eyes. "What does he mean by my son, Mom?" The expression on Noah's face shattered Sharon's heart because it was so similar to the youngster he once was, trusting, optimistic, and oblivious to the web of secrets surrounding him. "Noah, there's something I need to tell you," she muttered, her voice shaking as she turned to face Nick and started crying. "I ought to have told you too this long ago." Still trembling from adrenaline, Nick turned to face her. "Sharon, what are you talking about?" he insisted. However, she was staring at Noah as though the world had vanished. "The DNA test," she muttered. Noah's eyes grew wide as he said, "The one that Victoria found? It's real." "You mean it's real? Which test?" Sharon inhaled deeply. The ensuing stillness was oppressive. "The test that says Mitch might be your biological father." Time seemed to have halted. Nick stumbled back, the color draining from his face. He growled, "That's not possible. It's not possible." Sharon's tears, however, conveyed a different message. She wept. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this. There were things I didn't know when everything with Matt Clark happened years ago, when I thought it was over." She turned to face Noah, who was standing motionless with a pale face and short breath. "Things that came back years later. Nick and I never questioned that you were his when you were a baby. However, I had another test done just to be sure when the hospital records turned up during that previous probe. And I concealed it. Noah, I was scared. I didn't want to ruin what we already had." Nick's voice broke as he gazed at Sharon. "Are you saying that you were aware? You didn't tell me that you knew this might be the case." Sharon started crying uncontrollably. "I couldn't stand to see you despise me once more. I believed that since you raised Noah I could ignore it. In every manner that mattered, you were his father, but the harm had already been done." Noah shook his head in shock as he glanced between them. "So what? You two have been deceiving me all my life. His voice wavered as he spoke. Dad, you made me think I was your son. And you gave me the impression that we were the ideal family, he said, turning to face Sharon. Desperate to explain, Nick extended his hand but Noah withdrew. He yelled, "Don't touch me. How are you two able to harm me like this?" Mitch, still bleeding but grinning from the ground, gave a sinister laugh. He whispered, "Now you know why I came back." Nick flushed once more at the dark enjoyment in his voice as he said, "You can try to run from the past, but blood always finds a way." "Stop talking," he growled. However, Sharon took hold of Nick's arm. "Nick, no. Quit. He's already caused enough harm." There was mayhem in the room. Enraged, Victoria moved ahead. "Sharon, how could you have kept this from us? From the whole family?" However, Sharon was unable to talk. Her voice broke as she reached for her son. "Please, Noah. My heart belongs to you." She attempted to embrace him, but Noah stopped, caught between the treachery he couldn't comprehend and the mother he loved. "No matter what that paper says, you are mine." His barriers finally collapsed. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart," Sharon whispered as she gave him a strong hug while her tears soaked his shoulder. "I ought to have been honest with you. I ought to have had faith in you." Nick's chest heaved as he turned away. He couldn't get the idea of Matt Clark, this Mitch Bacall. He whispered to himself, "You ruined everything once. And you're trying to do it again," Mitch said, grinning despite the agony. "Perhaps I didn't destroy anything." Nick pushed forward once more, but Victor's loud voice filled the doorway this time. "Perhaps I merely exposed what was always there." "That's sufficient." The commotion abruptly stopped when Victor Newman, the patriarch of the Newman clan, entered the room. Victor's keen eyes scanned the debris, including the broken glass, the blood, and the tears. "Could someone please explain why my grandson appears to have seen a ghost and why my son is throwing punches?" he insisted. Nick pointed at Mitch, still furious. He stated, "Because he is Matt Clark. Dad, he's back." Victor's eyes narrowed as he slowly turned to face Mitch. "He's using another name, but it's him." Mitch wiped the blood from his lip and grinned, saying, "You have some nerve coming back here, boy. Now you can call me Mitch. I've changed my ways." Victor's expression grew gloomy. "Do you really think I can't identify a viper when I see one?" Coldly, he said. Mitch only laughed gently, almost taunting him. "You step foot near my family again, I'll make sure you regret it." He stumbled out, leaving behind an emotional wasteland, saying, "Seems like your family's doing a fine job of destroying itself without my help." The fallout was catastrophic. Sitting on the couch, Noah gazed vacantly into space. He could hardly hear what Sharon was whispering as she knelt next to him and held his hand. "Noah, you are my son." Nothing alters that, but in his heart, he was unsure of his beliefs. "Now how should I look in the mirror?" he muttered. Sharon's heart broke once more. "Every time I see my face, I'll wonder if I'm his." "Please don't say that, Noah. You're kind, compassionate, and everything he could never be. Your identity is not determined by your DNA." Nick, on the other hand, stood by the fireplace, his thoughts racing. Not only had Sharon betrayed him, but fate itself had as well. "All this time," he whispered. Victor walked up to him and put a hand on his shoulder, saying, "All these years I thought I'd left that monster behind, and he's been haunting us through my own son." "You can't let this ruin you, son," he replied solemnly. "That boy was reared by you. No matter what a piece of paper says, you are his father." However, Nick's eyes were filled with agony. "How can I shield him from the blood?" Silently, he inquired. When Sharon heard, her heart broke once more. She said, "You don't have to shield him from it. You just need to love him through it," Nick murmured. But his silence made it clear that trust had been damaged in ways that words could not quickly repair. The Newman estate became silent once more as the evening drew on, but the emotional rubble remained. Sitting next to Noah, Sharon softly stroked his hair as she had done when he was younger. "Noah, you were born out of love. Never forget that," he said, hardly raising his voice above a whisper as he turned to face her. "But was it his hatred or your love?" She was unable to respond. Rather, she gave him a closer hug, as though her arms could shield him from the reality. Nick was standing by the window, gazing out into the shadows where Mitch had vanished. His eyes were blazing with determination, and his jaw was clenched. He whispered, "If Matt Clark thinks he can destroy my family again, he's got another thing coming." Despite the silence of the night, there was a sense of impending danger. A storm. Nick's blow was just the start of the pain that Mitch's return had already caused. Because everything has been altered by the DNA truth. The Newmans were left shattered as morning broke over Genoa City, each of them struggling to understand the implications of the news for their future. Sharon's love for her kid has strengthened her despite her remorse. Noah was divided between two fathers, the one who reared him and the one whose blood was in his veins. And Nick Newman, a man at battle with Matt Clark's ghost once more. But this time the battle was about more than just getting even. It was about getting his family's soul back before history repeated itself. Mitch wiped the blood from his lip while gazing at a picture of Noah someplace in the shadows. He said to himself, "You can't change blood. The game was only getting started. He'll come looking for answers sooner or later, and when he does, he'll find me." The Newman Ranch's heavy curtains let in the pale light of the slowly rising sun over Genoa City. But the new day brought no solace to Nick, Sharon, or Noah. Thick with tension, remorse, and unanswered concerns, the storm that had shattered the previous night continued to loom like an unseen cloud. Nick was reminded of the wrath he'd unleashed on a ghost he couldn't bury by the punch he'd thrown, which still hurt in his knuckles. And every breath and every place still carried the echo of Sharon's confession. Nick was standing in the kitchen, gazing blankly at an empty coffee mug. Tired, shattered, and older than he felt, his reflection shimmered in the dark liquid. Mitch's smile, the blood seeping from his mouth, and the contentment in his eyes were all still visible to him. He had provided Matt Clark with precisely what he sought, a response. Nick said angrily, "He's laughing at me right now. He desired for me to become uncontrollable. He desired for me to strike him." The quiet was broken by a quiet voice behind him. "You didn't just hit him, Nick. You hit everything he stood for," Sharon said as she stood in the doorway, her eyes swollen and red, her hair disheveled from a restless night. She appeared delicate, almost translucent, as if the truth had sapped her vitality. "You were standing up for Noah," she muttered. "Any father would have followed suit." Nick's jaw tightened as he turned to face her. "Any father," he said again, his words sour. "Are you certain you want to say that now?" Sharon winced. She was aware that she was deserving. "Please, Nick," she muttered. "Don't ignore me." Not just now, but Nick's eyes were icy. "I'm at a loss for words," he murmured. "You told me Noah was mine while staring me in the eyes for years. You allowed me to think that even though you knew there was a possibility he wasn't." Sharon's eyes filled with tears once more. "I didn't intend to harm you. I was attempting to safeguard us," Nick said in a strong, unvarnished voice. "Sharon, protect us from what? The reality?" The bang reverberated throughout the still house as he slammed his coffee mug onto the sink. Sharon swallowed hard and said, "You lied to me about the one thing that mattered most." Her voice shook. "I am certain that I did, and I will always regret it. But you can't allow that man to prevail, Nick. Don't allow him to destroy us." Nick put his fingers through his hair and averted his gaze. "He has already done so." Noah was sitting on the edge of his bed upstairs, gazing at a framed picture of himself as a kid with Sharon on one side and Nick on the other. His throat constricted. That picture was once consoling, a moment of security. It felt like a lie trapped in time now. Mitch's remarks continued to reverberate in his mind. "Are you certain you're not referring to my son? It was poison, and it spread quickly." His musings were interrupted by a knock on his door. "May I enter?" Victoria spoke in a quiet, circumspect tone. Her face was torn between worry and the unwavering resolve of a Newman as she entered. She added softly, "Noah, I know you're hurting, but we'll work this out." Noah gave a head shake. "How?" "Aunt Victoria, you saw the test." His voice broke. "You saw what it said. I always believed that I was similar to Dad. I have no idea who I am anymore." Victoria took a seat next to him. "You've not changed since yesterday. A piece of paper doesn't change anything about it." But Noah wasn't persuaded. With tears in his eyes, he said, "That piece of paper says my real father is a psychopath who destroyed this family once before. How can I cope with that? Victoria let out a sigh. She placed a hand on his shoulder and said, by remembering that you were raised by love, not DNA. Noah. Nick will always be your father. However, I can assure you that his pain is equal to your own. Perhaps even more. Victor Newman, meantime, was already in damage control mode at Newman Enterprises. His face was as hard as rock as he sat behind his enormous desk. Victor closed a file and mumbled, he's not getting away with this. Never again. With a worried expression on her face, Nikki walked in. You can't just go after Mitch Bacall, Victor. But Victor's jaw tightened. You'll only make things worse. Worse? The jerk waltzed into my house, made fun of my son, and ruined my grandson's tranquilly. Do you really think I'll just do nothing? Nikki moved in closer. Victor, you are aware of the previous incident. This family was on the verge of disintegration until Matt Clark pursued Nick and Sharon. History cannot be repeated. Victor raised his head, his eyes blazing. He got up and grabbed his coat, saying, that's exactly why I won't let it repeat itself. This Mitch is going to learn what it means to go to war with a Newman if he believes he can emerge from the shadows and take one of my grandchildren. Nikki's voice wavered. Please, Victor. Don't make Noah's situation worse. He doesn't require retribution. She stood in the doorway, hoping Victor wouldn't make another error that would cost them all dearly, but he had already left. He needs peace. Back at the ranch, Sharon was sitting in the living room looking through her phone with shaky hands. The message she had received was from an unknown number, but the words made her shudder. We're not finished. Sharon, you owe me the truth. I'll tell him myself or meet me at the lake house. She recognized the person right away. Mitch. She couldn't tell Nick that she was in a panic. Not after the way he had gazed at her this morning. She grabbed her coat and slid out the door, her heart racing. Nick was meeting with Michael Baldwin at the same time in an attempt to come up with a legal strategy. Nick stated, we can expose Mitch if he is using a different name. Michael groaned. Get him arrested for identity theft, fraud, anything. You must use caution, Nick. It will be difficult to prove he is Matt Clark if he is officially registered as Mitch Bacall, particularly if he has taken great care to hide his past. Nick banged his hands on the desk. He's trying to get close to my son by using that name. Michael leaned forward and said, I'm not waiting around while he plays head games with my family. Then you need proof, not rage, Nick said, but all he had left was rage. As she got closer to the ancient dock near the lake, Sharon's breath turned to mist in the chilly air. With his hands stuffed in his pockets and the same mocking half-smile on his face, Mitch was already there. It took you long enough, he remarked. Sharon, you've always been sentimental, constantly attempting to resolve issues that cannot be resolved. Sharon gave him a fierce look. What are you looking for from me? Mitch laughed. Acknowledgement is what I have always desired. You kept the truth a secret for all these years. I now want everyone to understand that Noah is not Nick's son. I own him. Kyle squinted his eyes. Kane. That's right, Jack remarked somberly. And Phyllis. She will regret getting involved with this. Kane was performing his own damage control across town. When Lily first saw him at society, her face was taut with annoyance. Kane, this is unbelievable. You claim to have locked down that system. I did, he was adamant. However, someone violated it. Victor Newman is now turning it into a weapon. Lily, I promise to make this right. Even if it's Phyllis, I'll track down whoever assisted him. Lily crossed her arms. Kane, exercise caution. You're experimenting with flames. He gave a sinister grin. Well, perhaps it's time to burn them all. Phyllis unexpectedly received an encrypted message back at the Grand Phoenix. We are aware of what you sold. Her heartbeat quickened. You can't hide forever. It was not Victor or Kane who sent that message. There was another person observing. Someone risky. In the meantime, Sharon was sitting next to Noah's bed in the hospital, whispering to her unconscious son, Baby, come back to me. Nick stood in the corner, his eyes red from sleep deprivation, his jaw clenched. Please. Detective Halpern entered through the creaking door. Mr. and Mrs. Newman, we discovered fresh security footage from the accident night, he continued, wiping his mouth. It may alter everything. Sharon stood up tall. What sort of video? Halpern paused. It depicts someone tampering with Noah's vehicle prior to the collision. Nick clenched his hands. Who? Halpern answered. We're still analyzing it, but the figure looks familiar. Sharon's phone buzzed before they could press him any harder. He's not the only one who ought to have perished that evening. A text message from an unidentified number appeared on the screen. Sharon felt her blood chill. Half expecting to see Matt Clark hiding in the shadows once more, she glanced around the room. Determined to confront her concerns, Sharon went back to the shadow room later that night. The air was heavy with silence and the pub was oddly deserted. Matt! She yelled out in no response. Then though she heard it, a terrifying close whisper. With her heart racing, she turned back and said, You can't bury the past, Sharon. But nobody was there. Or was it? Victor's business doomsday strategy was already growing at the same time. He summoned Victoria to his office and explained his next course of action, which was to fully acquire Jabot through middlemen. Jack won't have a business to run when I'm done, Victor remarked.